Lydia, a young journalist, arrived in Blackwood, a town marked by mystery and decay. As she stepped onto streets covered with dry leaves and observed the facades of crumbling colonial houses, she felt a heavy presence, as if the buildings themselves were keeping unspeakable secrets. The air was laden with untold stories, and darkness seemed to envelop every corner. What could have happened here? The whispers from residents of the neighboring town only heightened her curiosity. They spoke of Blackwood in cautionary tones, as if the mere name carried a weight that should be avoided. While exploring the town, Lydia discovered that every detail told part of a forgotten story. The broken windows seemed to watch the few passers-by, and the creaking doors were like memories of lives that once vibrated in now empty spaces. This dense and unsettling atmosphere fueled her determination. She didn't just want to understand the town, she needed to. Why did residents avoid talking about what had happened? What made them whisper instead of shouting their truths? As she walked, Lydia remembered stories of other towns that, like Blackwood, were ravaged by tragedies. In Chernobyl, for example, a catastrophic event forced inhabitants to abandon their homes, but memory and history couldn't be erased. Just as in Blackwood, the shadows of the past still lingered, and the desire to uncover the truth was stronger than fear. And so, Lydia's journey began, but what she would discover next could change everything. What were the residents hiding about the town's past? The answer to this question could not only reveal Blackwood's mysteries, but also transform how Lydia viewed the world around her. The search for this truth would lead her to dark and deep places where the light of reason might not reach. Lydia decided she needed to understand what had happened in Blackwood, and to do so, sought out the town's last known resident, Mr. Thompson. Upon entering his house, the smell of old wood and dust enveloped her, creating a sense of nostalgia and melancholy. Mr. Thompson, an elderly man with tired eyes and a trembling voice, hesitated to open up. However, when Lydia mentioned the town and its memories, he let slip a small detail. Nobody wants to remember what happened here. This phrase echoed in Lydia's mind, like a distant echo of a sad past. Mr. Thompson began to tell about his childhood, when children's laughter filled the streets. He described the town's vibrant life, where parties and celebrations were common. But everything changed one fateful summer. The children, who once played freely, began to disappear. Joy was replaced by deafening silence. Lydia felt a chill down her spine as she heard his story. What could have caused such a change? Mr. Thompson explained that after the disappearances, a cloak of fear settled over Blackwood. The town, once full of life, now seemed a shadow of itself, with residents preferring silence to facing the truth. This transformation intrigued Lydia, who wondered how a community could erase such a significant part of its history. Listening to Mr. Thompson's account, Lydia realized that the truth was buried beneath layers of fear and pain. She committed herself to discovering what had really happened, and so her desire to bring to light Blackwood's hidden history intensified. What she would discover next would lead her to unexpected confrontations and revelations that would change her life forever. During a single summer, the town of Blackwood experienced an inexplicable wave of disappearances. What makes this tragedy even more disturbing is that stories of this dark event were almost completely erased from the collective memory of the inhabitants. Lydia, the young journalist, finds herself facing a reality that defies logic. How can a town so quickly forget its own history? This is the essence of the mystery she is determined to unravel. When Lydia delves into the town's records, she finds alarming data. Dozens of residents disappeared without a trace, yet most inhabitants seem to live as if nothing happened. This silence resonates like an echo of pain, and the question persists: what or who forced this omission? Lydia discovers that often the truth is more terrifying than the darkness that surrounds it. As she investigates, she begins to realize that the fear of reliving this pain may be more powerful than the will to face it. Through the story of Clara, a young woman who also sought the truth, Lydia finds an emotional connection. Clara, in her diary, describes disturbing dreams and a shadowy presence that followed her. These records reveal a deep connection with what might have caused the disappearances. Clara's account becomes a guiding thread, leading Lydia to discover that in Blackwood, the line between reality and the supernatural is thin. As Lydia approaches the truth, the atmosphere of tension increases. Residents who previously seemed indifferent begin to dodge her, warning her about what is buried in the town. It's as if they carry an immense weight, a dark heritage that cannot be shared. Lydia realizes that the search for truth can have devastating consequences. The transformation unfolding before her is clear. The town needs to face its past, but the cost may be high. As she concludes her investigation, Lydia reflects on Blackwood's legacy, a town whose truths remain buried, waiting to be revealed. Lydia, while investigating Blackwood's secrets, discovers an old diary that belonged to a young woman named Clara. The diary's pages reveal not only Clara's thoughts and feelings, but also indicate that she was determined to uncover the truth about her town. She describes strange dreams and disturbing visions that haunted her, a feeling that something wasn't right in Blackwood. The diary is filled with emotions, bringing to light the desperation of a girl who simply wanted to understand what was happening around her. Clara had an imaginary friend who over time became increasingly real in her mind. This figure wasn't just an escape from loneliness, but a representation of supernatural forces that Clara began to fear. She believed this friend was guiding her toward hidden truths, making her question the safety of her own sanity. This aspect of the story creates an intense emotional connection, as many of us have faced fears and uncertainties in moments of solitude. As Lydia reads the diary, she realizes that Clara discovered something that could have changed Blackwood's fate. The text suggests that Clara's visions were actually premonitions of a tragic event to come, an event that would seal the fate of the town's residents. This revelation not only sends chills down the spine, but also leads Lydia to wonder if the search for truth might come at a high price. At the end of this journey, Lydia finds herself facing a dilemma. Should she follow Clara's footsteps, risking discovery of the truth, or remain safe, ignoring what might be buried in Blackwood? The tension builds, leaving the viewer anxious to know which path Lydia will choose. And so, Clara's story intertwines with Lydia's, showing that past and present are more connected than imagined, creating a cycle of mystery that cries out for resolution. Lydia realizes that the silence of Blackwood's residents isn't just a matter of shyness, but a deep fear that permeates the town. As she walks through the deserted streets, she feels the tension in the air, as if every corner hid a dark secret. The few remaining inhabitants dodge her questions with nervous glances and hurried whispers. The fear they feel is palpable, like a dense fog enveloping the town. In her attempts to interview the few residents, Lydia hears stories of disappearances and strange events. One of them, an elderly woman named Donna Clara, tells of a fateful night when the children didn't return home. The mothers searched and screamed, but nothing. The whispers of the forest swallowed everything, she says with a trembling voice. This narrative makes Lydia's heart race, as she realizes that each person holds a piece of the truth, but they're so terrified they prefer to keep their secrets. As Lydia digs deeper, she discovers that these residents are so afraid of the truth that they hide it even from themselves. She remembers a similar case she read in a book, where an entire community silenced themselves about a horrific crime to protect their children. This collective denial may be a way to survive emotionally, but it also traps them in a cycle of fear and ignorance. With each conversation she has, Lydia feels she's getting closer to the heart of the mystery. What could be so terrifying that it leads an entire town to silence? The residents of Blackwood are caught in a dilemma: speak up and risk their lives, or remain in a suffocating silence. As this journey continues, Lydia realizes that truth can be a double-edged sword. What she discovers may not only change the town's narrative, but also put her own safety at risk. Thus, the question hangs in the air: how far would you go to protect a secret? The disappearances in Blackwood are linked to a cult that operated in the town, and this revelation changes everything Lydia believed she knew about the place. Investigating further, she discovers that the cult met secretly in a dense grove, where strange rituals were performed under moonlight. The older residents spoke in whispers about nights when the sound of chanting echoed among the trees, creating an atmosphere of fear and reverence. Lydia finds a resident who, upon hearing about the cult, recalls a tragic event that happened during a ceremony. He describes a fateful night when, during a ritual, something went terribly wrong. Flames illuminated the pale faces of the participants, but what should have been a celebration soon turned to chaos. Thunderous noises and screams broke the calm of the night, and many were never seen again. This story, full of emotion and drama, raises questions about the limits of devotion and what human beings are capable of doing in the name of protection. Hearing this narrative, Lydia feels a shiver down her spine. The connection between the cult and the disappearances becomes increasingly clear, but the truth seems hidden in a labyrinth of fear and secrets. The town of Blackwood not only erased its events, but created a culture of silence that protected the guilty and silenced the victims. Clara's story, the diary Lydia found, reveals that she too was surrounded by this same fear. The visions that haunted her may have been warnings of something terrible about to happen. This revelation transforms Lydia's search into a race against time. She realizes that by unraveling the past, she may not only discover the truth about Blackwood, but also face the horrors that still haunt it. Lydia's emotion intensifies as she understands that some truths can be so dangerous that inhabitants prefer to live with their shadows rather than face the light. And so, the search for answers becomes a journey not only to understand the past, but to confront the ghosts that still haunt Blackwood. Confronting Mr. Thompson is a decisive moment for Lydia. As she enters the small house filled with antique objects, she feels the tension in the air. The elderly man watches her, his eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and resignation. When he finally speaks about the disappearances, his words are heavy as stones. He reveals that for years, the town was kept in a dark silence, a pact of protection that involved rituals and sacrifices. "We did what was necessary to protect Blackwood," he says, with a voice laden with remorse. The truth is that the cult of which he is a part believed that evil forces were gathering in the shadows of the forest surrounding the town. They believed that some souls had to be offered to appease these forces and ensure the safety of the residents. This revelation leaves Lydia in shock, but at the same time, she begins to understand the complexity of the motivations behind the cult's actions. What seemed to be an attempt to protect the town was also destroying lives. As the details about the rituals are revealed, Lydia recalls Clara's diary, which mentioned visions and an imaginary friend who guided her. It was as if the ghosts of the past were calling, Lydia thought, realizing that Clara may have discovered something that led to her own disappearance. Day turns into night, and the conversation between Lydia and Mr. Thompson becomes an emotional duel, a confrontation between truth and the protection of the community. The moral dilemma is palpable. Was the protection worth the price they paid? Lydia begins to wonder if the truth should be revealed, even knowing it could destabilize the fragile peace that remains in Blackwood. As she ends the conversation, she feels the weight of responsibility. Truth is a double-edged sword, and the question hangs in the air. What might happen if the truth is revealed? The viewer is left with a sense of urgency and uncertainty, eager to discover what Lydia will do next and what consequences her actions might bring to Blackwood. In Blackwood, truth is a heavy burden that many prefer to leave buried. Lydia, reflecting on her journey, realizes that the town and its inhabitants carry a legacy of secrets that have shaped their lives. Hidden truths, however dark they may be, have the power to transform reality and often reveal who we really are. This is the dilemma Lydia faces: the need to expose reality versus the residents' desire to protect what remains of their lives. As she observes the ruins and listens to the echoes of laughter that once filled the streets, Lydia realizes that Blackwood's story isn't just about what was lost, but also about the lessons that can be learned. A painful truth can be a burden, but it can also offer a path to healing. She remembers what Mr. Thompson said: "Nobody wants to remember what happened." This phrase resonates, as many of us have aspects of our past we prefer to ignore. However, facing these truths can bring liberation. With this reflection, Lydia wonders, how can we transform pain into strength. By connecting with Clara's diary and the cult's history, she understands that knowledge is power, but it can also be dangerous. What might happen if the truth about the disappearances were revealed? The consequences could be profound, but perhaps truth is exactly what Blackwood needs to break free from the chains of the past. Thus, the video invites viewers to reflect on their own stories. What would you do if you were in Lydia's place? The courage to face difficult truths may be the key to a brighter future. In the end, the message is clear. Some truths are heavy, but ignoring them can be even more destructive. It's time to look at the past and decide what we want to carry into the future.